Good morning and welcome to Drawing for Tattooers. I'm your host, James Wisdom. And if this is working for you, please let us know in the chat. So I'm going to check the YouTube stream and make sure we're going. Looks like it. So again, good morning and welcome to Drawing for Tattooers on Guy Aitchison's Reinventing the Tattoo Network. Here on Reinventing the Tattoo, we like to inspire, create, and ultimately make better tattoos and art together. We beam out nearly every single day, and with your help, we become an amazing network of quality, on-demand art shows and art-related, tattoo-related content. So we've all been receiving rave reviews thanks to you. So yeah. Hey, good morning, Amber. Great to see you today.
Good morning.
I'm just going through the thing, right? The trying to make the trying to do this better every time, but it's always a challenge, right? To to open it up. So I hope that that's an enjoyable part, right, for everybody. To watch this bit, right? It's a part of it. And so anyway, I'm so glad you could be here. I'm so glad that you that are watching or out there are here. So yeah, please let us know in the comments what you think. Yep. So again, you can find us at Reinventing the Tattoo. There is all sorts of resources here. We click on the resources. Free tattoo courses. You can have access to free stuff. Free stuff is great. This is also a way to start to learn about what is on offer here at Reinventing the Tattoo. So can't encourage you enough. If you're interested, this is a good way in. We also have other shows that we do, and I will scroll down to those now, right? So on Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern, we have Skill Building, a drawing group hosted by Jason Leeser. That's followed on Mondays at 9 a.m. Eastern, Drawing for Tattooers with James Wisdom. That's me. You made it. This is the show. At 5 p.m. Eastern on Mondays, we have Let's Talk About Feelings, hosted by Robbie Ripple and Dusty, as well as on Wednesdays, we have I think we have the tattoo collecting. Hold on. Let me get all of the times right. Right, so on Thursdays at 6 p.m. we have the Tattoo Collecting 101 podcast. So be sure to check out all of our shows. And now we'd like to take a moment and thank our sponsors. World Tattoo Events, worldtattooevents.com is the largest, most comprehensive resource for tattoo events worldwide. Lots of updates as conventions are rescheduling like crazy. So you can always learn about the newest upcoming convention, tattoo event in your town at worldtattooevents.com. Tattoo Now. Tattoo Now is the leading edge of professional development and management and digital tools for tattooers of all levels. Upgrades competitive with any CRM mailing list software out there. So if you want to take your communication to the next level, check out Tattoo Now. Ask for Gabe. And of course, I'd like to thank Guy Aitchison for being the founder and inspiration behind Reinventing the Tattoo and the Reinventing the Tattoo community. You can learn more about Guy Aitchison by visiting guyaitchison.com, where you can find, you can purchase paintings, prints, as well as tattoo machines. and also learn Guy's story about becoming a painter and his journey through the tattoo world. Right? Of course, if you would like to host a Reinventing event or sponsor the community, you can always email management at reinventingthetattoo.com. And yeah, we did it. That was the that was the introduction. So it's always a fun experience. Amber, how are you doing this morning? Good to see you.
Pretty good.
That's great. Oh, so you're remember last week you were letting us know that you had a big change.
Yeah.
How, how's that going for you? Just an update for us.
It's not going bad. I mean, I just went back to making money
Okay.
while I look for a new apprenticeship. And I'm not even sure an apprenticeship is how I really need to go. Robbie even suggested I look for like a junior tattoo artist position because technically I've already put in most of my 2,000 hours over my 2 apprenticeships.
Right. So those are
And
the
that's
that's
not a tattoo.
those are the rules in your area. You have to have a
Yeah.
certain amount of hours. Okay. Now this is interesting because it is a patchwork of regulations that everybody has to face. So wherever you find yourself at, it's really good to understand what's required in your location. And
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I think the APT, the Alliance of Professional Tattooists, is a really great resource that I would
I've
encourage
been looking
everybody
into
to.
that.
What's that?
I've been looking into that.
Yes, I think that I would encourage you to consider joining up, and sort of again a junior level tattooist with them as well. And they have different levels of membership, but
Hmm.
it's again they provide a lot of resource, and they could also they might be able to advise you in certain respects as far as like how to find a good place for you in your location, because they're our largest sort of professional trade organization that tattooers have. Anyways, I think it's definitely something that you're checking it out. I think that's good.
Yes.
Definitely check it out. So, um, well, we've got Jason Leeser hopping in the Zoom call. Everybody, uh,
Nice.
yes. So, Jason, good morning. As you're connecting to audio, I had the pleasure of being on Jason's show yesterday. Jason, it was a great time. Thanks again for having me. Good
You're
morning.
always welcome. Good morning. Good morning.
Um, yeah, no, that was so much fun getting a chance to catch up with you yesterday and talk shop, as it were. Thank you for all the really thoughtful questions, and yeah, and the space to do that. It was fun.
Yeah, no problem. The pleasure was all mine.
Well, we were just opening up, right? Amber is on the hunt for a new shop, and I was talking about the APT, the Alliance of Professional Tattooists. Um, Jason, are you involved with the Alliance of Professional Tattooists at all?
Not currently. I was many years ago. And I've kind of let it lapse since then. But lately, with everything going on, I have been looking at getting back into that. Typically speaking, I mean, if we're talking about, future job prospects and stuff like that. Um, I've always found that's where having a really good solid network of other tattooers that and I think I'm frozen. That's no
We can
good.
hear you. I
Oh,
can
there
hear
we
you,
go.
but yeah,
There you go.
your
Yeah,
video
I've
was
got
frozen a little
a
bit.
couple of different things going on right now, so hopefully this doesn't crash on me. Um, but I've always found it to be always the best bet to reach out to other contacts, other people you may know in the area in which you work, to kind of go through and, just put feelers out. It's where, networking comes in real handy.
Yeah.
So, and I'm just going to turn that off for now, unless I can.
Well, I think that was really great advice. You know what I mean? And
I agree.
yeah. Here we go. Yes. So yeah, as you're looking, just hang in there. And Robbie seemed to have like that's some really good advice. So consider that too.
Yeah.
But just maybe you are ready to jump in and start doing it. So. But yeah, that's awesome. Also joining us this morning is Jen. Hey Jen, how you doing? Good morning.
Good morning. It's 7 here, so waking up.
Yeah, it is. It is early on Monday mornings.
Yes.
But that's also, it's a great way to kick off the week. That's the way I've always sort of thought about it. I really love these streams because, again, it's like you get a chance to catch up with a group, a close community, but then also, we get to talk about. I've learned the the most amazing things, right? Just hanging out with you all, and so yeah, no, I'm always really grateful for this space and for everybody that joins us. Right. Today, I wanted to talk about anatomy a little bit, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully we can have just a quick sort of overview of stuff. Yeah. So hopefully you can see my screen now. On at a previous episode, we talked about the skeleton, right? Learning about some of the the larger muscle groups of the body, is that like entirely necessary for your job as a tattooer? I think so, a little bit. Do you have to know what every one of them is called and stuff? Maybe not necessarily, but I think it can be very valuable, almost being able to see through the surface, right? Like, even the muscles we're going to talk about are, particular to, human bodies. You do see them. There are similar sorts of shapes and similar sorts of configurations within the animal kingdom as well. And this can also be useful information when you're, I was talking with Jason yesterday about drawing birds and stuff, like learning bones and, and sort of thinking about how muscles, sometimes there's a little bit of, intersection and parallel. So anyways, wanted to just sort of briefly go over some stuff. And again, as you're looking at the body and you are starting to, compose things and or sort of fit tattoos to bodies, these can be really useful sorts of points of reference. So again, we'll start with maybe some of the bony landmarks. And let's see, I don't know if I might be able to at least highlight. Maybe.
I will say the most impressive word I use around my clients is epicondyle. They love it.
It's a good one. So and I wanted to talk about that, but all right, so which epicondyles, right, are you where do you point which epicondyle?
All of them on the clavicle, wrist bone, ankle bone, any bony little knobby bit.
Yeah, isn't that fun? Yeah. So right, there are so many like fun anatomical words you can drop with your clients, and then so if your clients are in the medical field, they appreciate that, right? But then it can also be really nice for those who are not. Okay, so the first thing I highlighted here, the sternal notch, right? Sternal notch is where your collarbones, your clavicles, they're touching the. This is the head of the sternum, right? So the sternum is the bone that is the front of your rib cage, right? It's also where the pectoralis or the chest muscles they sort of originate from. Right? They're attached to the sternum, right? So right at the top. Everybody has this, at the base of their throat, this sternal notch. So it's also the center, right? It's also this sort of center of the body. And so this is a good sort of, just sort of place, I think, to start your bony marking, right? If you've ever tattooed in this area, you'll know that it can be very tricky, right?
Yes.
Especially because of over the bones that are there, right? The skin can be fairly thin, can be very sensitive as well, right? So, it can be difficult to put, very, very detailed line work and the like. So, but sort of learning about this relationship, right? We've got this sternal notch, right? And then, laterally, right? We also have these points here, right? The AC joint, right? The acromion process. This is where your collarbone meets your scapula, right? Your shoulder blade, right? It's also, for drawing purposes, you might think about this is where the arm kind of starts at. It's the top of the deltoid. The deltoid is this outside muscle group right here, right? It's a big one. So we'll get into more of that later, right? The stomach muscles, right? The six pack, referred to as the rectus abdominis. That's these ones here, right? It's specific to the sort of the center, right, of the torso, if you like. Then you have external obliques, love handles, right? That's right. There are muscles down there, right? A lot of times there it can be a little bit of, we'll carry a little bit of extra fat right there. There's a couple different kinds of fat, of course. There is a brown fat that lays deeper, that's under the surface, and that's a very healthy kind of fat. Anyway, these are just a few of these sort of areas of the torso. I think too, like a lot of times with when we talk about hips, right? The hip, where the hip bone is located, it's up pretty high, really. You know what I mean? There's hip bone kind of right here with the all the way up there. That's sort of pressing out this flank pad, right? And so, right, interesting just to think about, see where the bones are located, see how it sort of affects the muscle groups. This is latissimus dorsi. You can see it right here. It's actually referring to a muscle on the back. It's a really big muscle, and we'll look at that here in just a minute. Get rid of some of those. Right, so when we'll turn to the back, this is just a very brief, but hopefully maybe it whets your appetite and makes you want to get into learning some of this just even a little bit more. Okay, so we can see here on the back, right? There's a big muscle on the neck, the sternocleidomastoid muscle. So if everybody, you can sort of feel it, right? If you turn your head from side to side, the muscles that are responsible for that, right, the sternocleidomastoid muscles, they are connected to your clavicles, really close to that sternal notch we were talking about, the head of the sternum. these muscles here on the back of the neck, the trapezius muscles. Sometimes you hear like, people who are into going to the gym, right? The traps, right? So you got to work the traps out. And here's that latissimus dorsi. Very big muscle on your back, right? Very big muscle on the back. So when you're looking at somebody's back, you're going to have to deal with their flesh, right? There's going to be lots of flesh that's going to be present. But sort of, again, thinking about how these groups are all related, how this trapezius is really, this area here is all trapezius, right? And then the flow, right, of the lats, latissimus dorsi. Again, you're gonna, a lot of times if you work on, the lower back, you might see those two dimples, right, in the very low of somebody's back. And everybody has those. It's actually this pelvic bone. It's very close, right? It's an insertion point, right? So it's very close to that bone. That's why those dimples, seem to be present. Again, somebody could have extra weight, and you may not see them as it's almost like the less sort of overall mass that they have. You might see those dimples a little bit more clearly. But those are referred to as the PSIS, or the post superior iliac spine. It's how it's how all of these muscles in the back they're connecting to your pelvis. So so again, it's a very good bony landmark. Like we talked about the sternal notch just earlier, and then so those little dimples in the back, the post superior iliac spine, they can be really sort of useful too. Glutes, right? There's some muscles in your butt, and these are again, if you're designing back pieces, right? So I'm thinking about Jason's bodysuit project, for example, right? Or whatever the case may be. Where do you place, right? Where do you place these things? Sometimes, your clients may have really specific ideas about where they want them, and they do get the ultimate say. It is their body. But thinking about how these designs may interact and flow with a particular muscle group, they may not be thinking about it, right? You might be able to show them, put it here. And I think that this comes from, of course, experience, but also looking at the form, right? Looking at the forms of that bodies take on. These can be really useful. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down. Oh yeah, this book, right? This is Stephen Peck's Anatomy for the Artist. Again, I think it's a really great sort of illustrated anatomy book. All right, here we can see sort of profile view. I really feel like you can see this flow, right? The way that the body flows, so interesting. But yes, so anyway, the whole idea here is just again, so interesting. Don't get turned off by all of the language. There's a lot of names here. But of course, so you get a good anatomy book, right? Or you watch some videos or something like that. You can start to get the hang of it, right? You really can. And then of course, like, with any book, it's good to read them, which, I think is, for me, I'm guilty. Like, I just like pictures and stuff. But when I read the books, I get so much out of it. I wanted to scroll. Here's some wonderful illustrations in this book that I think can lend a lot of insight. You look at the artist that creates these, these works like this, a good book of anatomy, and they're thinking about it. So if you're interested in drawing bodies, of course, this is going to be super necessary. But I think for us, we work on bodies, right? We're tattoo artists, and so I think that's something that we really need to, it's really good to familiarize yourself with it. Right. Love that, right? Serratus anterior, this, there are these muscles that travel across your rib cage, and they are, they can be really sort of aesthetic. There they are. You can see them right here. But also, at the same time, if you're designing a rib piece, there might be something that interesting there for you, even if you can't really see them super well, right? There might be some flow that you can tap into, right? These big shapes, right? We were just sort of talking about this, right? Trapezius, this sort of diamond shape, the lats, right? The latissimus dorsi, how it is more of this triangle shape underneath. This is a lot of times, I think, why when we see back pieces that are very effective, they're taking advantage of these shapes. There's just too much to cover. I'm going to scroll down quickly to the arms and stuff. But this is leading to something else too. I just wanted to sort of start on this. All right, so the arm, right? The upper extremities. You can see that this is divided into two. Scroll back a little bit. You can see this is divided into two different, categories for the arm, right? So supine, right, versus pro. Okay, so what that means, supinated versus pronated. So you can see that, right? If you have your hand, right? Like if you can, this is how my teacher explained it to me, and I thought it was really useful. Right? So if you turn it over, like you can hold a bowl of soup, right? Supinated, right? Versus, you turn it over like this, pronation, right? Pronation, supination. This makes a big difference, right? Especially, I find it never fails. It's always very interesting when I'm working on somebody's arm. Sometimes it's tough to get the stretch right. Sometimes it's tough to you're trying to work on the back, or you're trying to work on these different areas and stuff. Sometimes you just need to have them, rather than struggle, you just have them just rotate their hand, right? Just, basically what, you're turning the, the radius, which is the arm bone, and the ulna, right? Sort of switching them over. Sometimes this makes a huge difference. And I think tattoo artists that are very experienced, they know this, but, if you're new to this, you may not think about it, right? Just that simple, like turn your wrist over, right? Even if you're working on the upper arm, can be, I think, very useful. So hold a bowl of soup, supination, right? Pronation. That's that's just a way to think of it. That always helped me remember it. Right, deltoid, like we were talking about earlier, this very big muscle group out here. Biceps, this area here. I think a lot of us know these ones. What is really nice though, we can sort of get here to the brachoradialis. I think is a really important muscle group. Not that part. This part. Brachoradialis is a part of the sort of the forearm muscles that sort of connect the upper right to the forearm, right? The upper arm to the forearm. And so this is almost like this highway, right? This pass, right? But this is where you can bring whatever's happening up here can flow nicely into what's happening on the forearm. And that's, it can be easy to sort of disregard it, cut it off, but that's this muscle group that really helps sort of connect these two sections, right? So brachioradialis, it's right there in the middle, right next to here, a olecranon process of the ulna. That's your elbow. So the ulna is on the it's on the pinky side. It's the thinner, it's going to be thinner down here by the wrist, and it gets real thick, and then that's this elbow bit, right? That's the it's the process. It's this pointy part of your ulna. So the arm bone, right? That's what an elbow is. And so again, you're starting to connect these dots. You're trying to like sort of figure out what it is that's going on. As we can really see, and everybody that, you know, if you tattoo a lot, you do sort of notice this, I'm sure. It's a lot more, it's more meaty, right? There's a lot more. This is where the muscle groups, your extensors, uh, uh, that's where they are located, right in the upper forearm. It's all tendinous and stuff down here by the wrist, right? So it's much thinner. There isn't really much in the way of muscles and stuff going on down there. So, anyways, just sort of thinking about this basic, you know, it's almost like, and we can get into this a bit later, but it's almost like there's a bit of flow that's happening, right? There's movement and curvaceousness, and then there's almost like anti-flow down there, right? It's almost very linear insofar as like, you know, what's happening down at the wrist. So you can use that. You can also sort of, you know, be antagonistic about it, right? You can start to put some flow and stuff down there by the wrists. Anyways, so what I wanted to yes, Proco. Thanks, Jen. I do like Proco quite a bit. But I wanted to share one more really great resource for everybody too. And so I don't often do this, but this is from Reinventing. This is from Guy Atchison's book, right? He also talks about the muscle groups and how they can be useful for us tattooers, right? So this is in the Fit and Flow chapter, and it talks about the arm muscles, right? So deltoid, biceps, brachialis, triceps. Some of the things that we were just discussing, but he goes through, he talks about the shapes and stuff, and then he lays them out this way. And this is something that I feel like it, you know, can be very useful for tattooers, right? It's just sort of thinking about this movement, the way that you can sort of envision the flow of how these muscles are, you know, for design purposes, right? Because we could all, you know, we could sort of see, like in the other illustrations, right? There was sort of, you know, muscles are made up of fibers and they're all sort of densely packed together, and so there is like it's almost like hairs, right? And there's all this sort of striation that is occurring. Well, how can we think about that as, you know, in terms of our design, fit and flow? And so I think there's other ways you can imagine this flow, but I really enjoy what Guy has you know, created here. And so you can think about like this deltoid flowing, you know, sort of in this circular motion, and as it moves down here, the biceps right on the front, you can see how that is starting to sort of become one, right? Like flow into this deltoid, triceps as well. And here you can really see, you know, the brachioradialis, and is that like that intermediary point between what's upper and what's lower. And so, again, talking about like anatomy is important, and there's all sorts of resources out there, but this is very specific to the thing that we do on the daily basis, right? Like, again, the composition that you make, whether it's, you know, on the quadrangle, right? If it's on a square or, you know, a rectangle or whatever, or circle, whatever the case may be, right? Versus, you know, like on the body. How can you think about this? How can you make it sort of, you know, really effective? So I think thinking about this in this way is really helpful. And so what Guy advises, and this is something that I like to do as well, is start with oval drawing, right? You draw big oval shapes that will, you know, sort of isolate where these big muscle groups are. That will give you almost like small little areas that you can compose. And so, yeah, so he goes on into quite a bit of detail as far as, you know, how you can think about these lines of flow, how you can think about like these big muscle groups and how they relate. Yeah, and then we can see just a little bit of flow. There's so much more movement, right, with these larger muscle groups up here, right? This sort of, it's very circular sort of movement that's happening versus, you know, down here by the wrist. Just, you know, it corresponds, right? He's corresponding. He's reacting to the, you know, the tendons, the extenders, the extensors, all of the bits of muscle that are located here in the forearm. It is it's so complicated, but if you can make it look, you know, very simple and elegant, you know, this is the type of thing that he's going after. Now take this and relate it to the thing that you are interested in doing. I suppose that's really kind of the goal, would be to give you some insight into how it is that you're going to, you know, fit your compositions on the body, because the body isn't a, you know, just a rectangle, right? On the back there might be something closely to that analogy, but it's, you know, there's so much movement, right? The body is always sort of moving, even when it's standing still, and so this is, I think, can be so helpful and so useful. Learn anatomy, get into it. You're doing tattoos, you have to be interested in what you're interested in, of course, the aesthetics you like, but working with bodies, you know, should be something that I believe that, you know, you can do it, right? And you can also, you can commit some of these terms to memory. Having that language can be, I think, very, very powerful. And so, anyway, this is a resource from Reinventing the Tattoo. If you know, subscribe to the, you know, the canon, or to the, you know, to the lessons, you can have access to this. Latissimus dorsi, trapezius, oblique external abdominis, right? Gluteus maximus. He goes into so much detail. Again, you can really sort of see this relationship, right? We were talking about the trapezius versus the latissimus dorsi. There's that area of the lower back, and, you know, how that might sort of, how you can sort of think about it. That's what he's talking about right here. And so, yeah, right? Like, beautiful. Just beautiful. You know, it's almost like if you just look at this and you're not thinking about this stuff, right? It's almost like it's such a mystery almost, you know? You're like, how in the hell, right? How are you coming up with this? It just works, right? There's more to it, right? I think it's very clever. I do. I think it's very clever. And so anyway, this is what I wanted to talk about today. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I'd really love to open it up for more discussion, and, you know, if anybody had stuff they want to share, yeah, that's my piece for today. So.
Sharing specifically about anatomy or in general?
Yeah, in general is fine. I mean, you know, so again, like, if you have, like, if you have questions is cool, but also if you have, like, you know, just, again, I think so a lot of times we have all kinds of viewers, and some of the viewers that we have are so new to this. You know what I mean? Because that's a, you know, sort of the audience, right? Apprentices, maybe even people who are very, you know, are kind of younger, and they're interested in tattoos and stuff. And so I think talking about, like, you know, maybe like revelations or something that you've experienced, like, you know, I learned this before, I found it really helpful, anything like that, we can just conversate as well. So, but
Yeah.
I am opening up.
Well, I know you also come from an academic background, and I'm sort of biased that way too. But I'd say, like, even the local arts center, you know, like a nonprofit. You don't have to go to art college, but I think joining like a figure drawing class has been one of the most beneficial things for me, and it helps keep me accountable. Like I don't have to think about it. I go once a week. You work it into your schedule, you know, it's like one of those muscles. If you don't use it, you lose it. And yeah. And it's also so rewarding and inspiring physically being in a room with other people who are drawing. I think you pick up so much through osmosis that you know, Zoom is a valuable resource, but it's different when you get to be in the same room with someone and see how they work.
Sometimes it's just different being in the same room as art, being able to see it up close. I get a lot of inspiration just from going to museums.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, go look at stuff, right? Museums and stuff. Go to figure drawing groups. You know what I mean? Just get out there and draw and stuff. I think can be useful. But I would say, like, no time in history have we ever had so much access, right? Jen is right. We don't have to go to, art school specifically. We can curate our own kind of education. It can be challenging though sometimes to know what's going to be valuable for you. So the only way to do it too is to try it, right? You have to like actualize it, right? Um, but yeah, Jason, what about you? Do you get a chance to?
I
I know
didn't do
that
it.
I
It
know
wasn't
that
me.
you have some experience with figure drawing classes and stuff.
Yeah, so I as well come from an academic background, went to art school, took my time with it, and I enjoyed being in college. I'll leave it at that. But I learned a lot, and where I went to school, we were kind of forced to take and explore lots of different mediums. We didn't have a choice, it was a requirement. So we took, figure drawing classes. We took classes with soft pastels. We took classes with printmaking and lithography, copper plate etching, stone lithography, digital printmaking, 3D design, wood shop. Like these were all required courses where I went to school. And each one of them was beneficial in different ways when you look at creating concepts of art, looking outside your normal perspective, looking outside of the things that you're really interested in and how that can have an impact on, what you do stylistically. For example, if I'm working with copper plates and I'm doing a copper plate etching, I'm going to approach that in a pretty similar way that I would do a tattoo, because everything's got to be, you have to really define where your edges are, and you have to really define how do you want this to look before you ever touch that copper plate. Partly because when I was doing it, copper was really expensive and I was a broke college student. So kind of had to be, you kind of had to be careful about that. But there's something that you could take away from everything. 3D design classes were great because it forces you to think in 3 dimensions, right? And when we're doing tattoos, essentially what we're doing is we're decorating a 3-dimensional surface. So if we're looking at, and this is kind of what you were going over earlier today about the different muscle groups and the different muscle structures, we're basically mapping out a 3-dimensional object, right? And we're now taking a graphic or a 2-dimensional design, even though it may be rendered in 3 dimensions, but we're essentially trying to stick a 2-dimensional design onto a 3-dimensional object, right? So you have to take in, where are these planes? Where does the light hit? How do different things curve? What's going to be obstructing your view? How is this going to look in relationship to this? And how is this going to complement this 3-dimensional form, right? And if these are all things that if we don't think about, then we're constantly always going to be struggling with, okay, well, why does this design that I put so much time into, why does it not look right? Oh, well, maybe it doesn't look right because I forgot to, factor in that there's a divot, a pit right where the pectoral muscle sits next to the armpit, right above those lateral muscles. I forgot that that's going to create a natural shadow and create a natural indentation. Okay, well, I can't put something that has a very bright highlight in a place that has a natural indentation because that's going to naturally be coming underneath shadow. So that's not visually going to communicate correctly. Instead, what you would want to do is look at where would that light wrap around that form to create a natural highlight, right? Because if you complement the form and you use your form, whatever three-dimensional form you're working on, whether it's a human or maybe you're working with a sculpture, you want to make sure that where the light is going to hit is going to create that natural kind of a highlight with whatever kind of design element you're putting onto this three-dimensional form. And that's something that until I took this three-dimensional class, I never really thought of that. I had read Guy's book and I was like, oh yeah, there's natural flow. Okay, yeah, I get it. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Oh yeah, anatomy. Yeah, no, I get that, blah, blah, blah. But I wasn't really thinking about working in 3 dimensions. I wasn't thinking about if I place this design in this area, there's going to be a natural horizon as the arm curves around where I can only see yay much of it. And then you can take it a step further and you can say, okay, well, if I'm looking at this as a 3-dimensional object, I want it to now be visually interesting in every major focal point from every major direction, right? So that's something else you have to factor into. And Guy's a master of this. I've been literally staring at his stuff since high school. And I have friends of mine that can attest to that. They're like, oh my God, you finally got tattooed by him? You've only been looking at his stuff for like 20 some odd years, So he's mastered thinking in that kind of a conceptual way. And it's something that, I personally don't expect a lot of younger tattooers to really think in that kind of a level or with that kind of a dimension, mostly because the way I was brought up in this industry is that you're going to spend your first few years focusing on technique to get that down, right? Then you start expanding, but until you can execute a solid tattoo at a smaller size, it makes no sense to start thinking about these larger planes and these larger, areas simply because you're focusing on technique at that point. Now, there's always going to be an element of, okay, well, is it placed correctly? Right? Yeah. But you're not necessarily going to be thinking about how is this small tattoo going to be wrapping completely around an arm, right? It's a small tattoo. It's going in a smaller space. It's got to flow with the area you put it in. And that's where understanding anatomy comes into play. But when you're thinking about, okay, well, if I've got a direct flow line coming from the hip, going all the way up from the front plane onto the side plane, wrapping all the way around onto the back, onto your deltoids and, or not your deltoids, your lats, if you're wrapping from the hip all the way around to if it's a small tattoo, it's not covering that much area, right? You still have to have it placed right, but you're not thinking about those horizon lines necessarily.
There's a part of me that does that agrees with where the focus needs to be as you're beginning and stuff. But I would say wrestle with it. Start to really grapple and deal and it's because it is such a vast terrain and concept dealing with anatomy. And then of course what I always found interesting with learning anatomy was that I have a body, you know what I mean? I have one. And so, learning more about it has been, It's been very
Although
enriching and infinitely rewarding. I hear what you're saying, though. It's like,
that does
why do
have
you?
yet to be proven, James. I've only ever seen you in the
I'm just
digital
just a
ether.
talking head.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that
am.
I
Yeah,
to me, you only exist that big.
I'm
So I
AI
mean,
generated. No, no, no. I think that that it can be very. I guess I just want to say that it's this thing you start off there's very basic stuff you could start off with, and then as as you get more in
right,
depth, that it should be again expanded. But yeah, it's a funny thing, right? It is like a juggling that you're doing, right? How do you you know how would you get so good at it? It would have to be
right,
this thing, you start off slowly, and trying to integrate it. Um, I, I guess there you could just completely ignore for the most part like what's going on with the body, and just think about the image itself, whatever the image is, and then you're just looking for spaces, for shapes where that would go, rather than like having some of
right,
the important things you were talking about, like there's going to be this was going to be in shadow, or this is going to be like sort of difficult to see. um, so there isn't a right and a wrong here. There
right.
is a
It's
what
just a
is
different approach.
right. There is a difference of approach, a difference in your philosophy about it. Um, I believe it's important, certainly important to me. It's what I would advocate for others, but it doesn't mean that like it's the ultimate answer.
Right.
But that's
And
that's
what
where I
I
stand.
was discussing was when you're in your first like 2 or 3 years tops, you know, eh,
Yeah.
the way I was brought up, and I'm not saying I agree with this, by the way.
Right. Right.
I'm not saying I agree with this, but the way I was brought into this industry was take your first couple of years and focus on technique. You know,
Yeah.
get a vague idea of body placement and just look at shapes. Where does this shape fit the best? You know, as you progress in your career, that's when you start to take on these more advanced and more evolved design aspects and more complicated, for lack of a better term, layouts. But that's when you really start to see that progression, and that's where these more advanced kind of thought processes, like looking at the pit of the armpit and the natural shadows that occur there in the later, well, not the later, but the more intermediate stages of your career. It's when you really need to start looking at that, because that's really going to help you separate out from that early stage in your career. Now, I kind of went about things a bit of a different. That's what I was always taught. I never agreed with that. I was always that guy, and I've got artwork to prove it. Like when I first got into this industry, I was like, back pieces. That's all I want to tattoo. Give me full backs and legs, and I want to do full upper torsos. Like, how could I get that mapped out? So I was already thinking like 9 stages beyond where I was. And I had myself checked a few times by a couple of pretty major artists, and they said, whoa, whoa, whoa. You're doing a lot of this large scale stuff, but like, take a look at some of the quality that you're putting out. Could probably be better quality. So take a step back from doing these massive projects and focus on quality, focus on technique a little bit more, and do that until it's perfect. Then go a little bigger and do that until it's perfect. And then go a little bigger and do that until it's perfect. And, so I did kind of have to like, drop back a few yards and reevaluate where I was and what I was doing, because my mind has always been on, I want to work huge. I want to do these epic pieces that you see that you're just like floored by. And I partially blame a group called the New School Collective. They are out of the Southern California area. They produced an art show back in the early 2000s called Suits Made to Fit. And that book alone has had a tremendous impact on my life. It was a fine art show dedicated to bodysuit designs, bodysuit artwork, looking at using the totality of the human body as a graphic canvas. And some of the stuff I saw is just stunning. right? You completely lose the form of the body. You know, when you're looking at it from such a distance, and it's almost like you have a window cutout, you know, a frame for this work of art that you're viewing. And it blew me away. Same thing with the first time that I saw some of Guy's larger scale work. I wasn't looking at, wow, this is on a person. I was looking at it and saying, holy shit, this is a work of art. Why does it look like it's inside of a frame? Right?
Mm.
Because when you look at stuff from that perspective, physically, you have to step back a distance in order to capture the whole thing visual. Right?
So I think so. I just I definitely hear what you're saying, and I
Sorry,
I really
went off on a
no, I
tangent.
really appreciate the really large scale stuff too. I think what's interesting though, and I think this kind of hopefully this ties everything back to what we're saying. I think even very small, intimate tattoos, you know what I mean? Very very like they again, like there's probably this certain sort of scale, right, where tattoos work a little bit better. Even though, I mean, I will admit, like, as when I was first learning how to tattoo, I saw, single needle tattoos on people that were, like that what used to be very popular, many, many, many years ago, and they looked like perfect, right? These parallel lines, they were like, these tattoos were 30 years old already, and they were just like, they weren't going anywhere,
Right.
right? And so it's this interesting thing of like, what's old is new again. There's a lot of people who work very fine line sorts
Right.
of things, very small pieces. I still think that there's this relationship to the body that it has, right? So the way it flows and the way, you know what I mean? The things that we're kind of talking about. So even just like, when you teach small children, like you can think about like kindergarten songs, where you point out this is my elbow and whatever else, you talk about. You're starting there, right? And by the time you become a, medical doctor, you're more in depth about like what it is that, things are. You get more in depth with it. But yeah, I guess there's always this relationship if we're doing body art to the body, right?
Right.
Yeah. Jen has a nice comment here. I remember reading from Guy that you can get away with less than perfect technique if the piece fits the flow of the body. I agree with that. I really do. It's important. Yeah, even the best executed tattoo is not great if it doesn't fit the
Correct.
body. Thank you, Jen. I think that it's very well said. It's something that Guy talks about, and Jason, I think that's what you're also kind of pointing at as well. It is, but I mean, as far as how do you, like how do you bring this up? What is the level that somebody can handle, or maybe that's a part of like learning and stuff, and maybe that's a part of being even, doing the thing is like there's a bit of being overwhelmed all the time, and you have to prioritize for yourself.
Right.
That's just like this weird thing of like, you can't do it all, right? But it has there has to be all of this stuff coming in from all different directions, and it just simply is, you know, you have to prioritize. You have to be interested in what you're interested in for sure. But anyway, no, I think this is a fascinating conversation. But I'm fascinated as I'm looking here at. I keep watching Jen drawing this bubble. Jen, that is stunning.
This is tonight's homework.
So, Jen, you're in the subscribers exclusive drawing group.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a project that that we're kind of working on. Everybody kind of had their option to do what they wish, but so you chose this reference, and now you're like making a painting of it. I could
Yeah.
see this as a tattoo, though. I mean, this is really, really great.
Thank you. This is my goal, to be able to do painterly stuff. But I think classes like that are so helpful because you don't find your style unless you try a million things. Like preferences are built over time, and you know, um, yeah, I feel like I'm still trying to figure out technique as a newer artist. So, someday I'd love to do something like this.
Oh,
Oh,
Jason
bye,
had to
Jason.
run. Thank you, Jason. That was great talking to him. Well, I also, I think that's very important. What you were saying, finding your style through sort of repetition and also like trying new things. Um, but this is, um, I think that you're sort of breaking this down in a way that like now you could potentially just make, you know, pour out some ink caps, right? Mix a little bit here and there, and then execute it. Um,
Yeah, I am slowly finding like what does and doesn't work as a tattoo, or what needs to be much larger to sustain like a shape that's going to hold. So that's been a trial and error thing. I never had a very involved mentor, so it's been like, fend for yourself, figure it out. It's painful because you make more mistakes, but that's life.
no, I agree. Amber Amber is definitely, she shared her experience with us as well about, sort of the frustrations of trying to, you know, learn this craft, right? And then also the business. It is, but you know what? You don't want somebody like, helicoptering you anyway.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? You gotta get out there and figure it out. You gotta make mistakes. It is painful. It really is painful, but it's, I think it's the universal, right? It is part of it. Um, anyway, that's my thoughts on it, and uh, this is a beautiful drawing, Jen. So I'm really excited to see, like how much further you take it. But it's, I think um, I've seen your work and sort of your approach to, to like painterly style tattoos, and so this reads to me like something that, could be, definitely would be in an interesting sort of avenue to see what you do. I agree with you also about like you've got to figure out what's going to work scale wise, longevity wise. It's like an ethical, sort of imperative, right? Like we want to do for somebody that's, the thing that's going to last as long as it can. Um, but you don't know until you try also, like you can look at certain examples, but again, there's your own sort of hand that's going to be involved in it, of course. Um so no, uh I think it's awesome. I think it already is a very intriguing sort of uh painterly design. So certainly, be interested to see how their style develops. It's very cool. And yeah, Jen, please.
Oh, I was just saying, me too, but thank you.
Yeah, yes, we are. Yeah, yeah, we are like going to be following along closely. So thank you so much, Amber. So excited for your new opportunity as well. I really think that ultimately, you know, you're gonna you're gonna come out through this experience and be um,
I'll
you know,
get my
glad it
license one
happened.
way or another, even if I have to open my own shop to get one.
Well, we'll be rooting for you, really will. Well, so this was the show. Uh, we talked about lots of stuff: anatomy, fit and flow, composition, and stuff. Even like discussing what's best for for new tattooers and our own styles. It's been a fascinating conversation, and one that I think is it's not resolved. Right? We didn't come up with any answers here. you know what I mean? Well, instead we leave with more questions. I think that's maybe better. I really do. Um, And so if you so if you're still here, right, watching us, I would encourage you hit the like, subscribe. It helps the algorithm, as you know. But also, keep keep on being interested in those things that you really find fascinating, right? Seek out what you can in order to further what it is that you're pursuing. It's going to take that drive. It really does. Um, so I would like to have us close out, and if you could tell everybody where we could find you, find your work. Would love to have that. Amber, please give us that information.
I wanted to make sure I wasn't muted for some reason. That happens to me all the time.
Loud and clear.
I am Amber Morgaine from Mays Landing, New Jersey, and you can find me on all social media sites under Amber Morgaine.
Amber, again, it's really great to see you and catch up with you.
You
And I
too.
think, yeah, I'm really glad that you are, in good spirits, and that you're sticking with it. It's
Yes.
hard. I definitely, I've definitely had my setbacks in life, and then in tattooing as well. And I I'm glad to stick with it. I'm always glad. You know what I mean? That like it's difficult to sometimes like bounce back
But
from
the
stuff.
only thing I like enough that I could do it every day without getting sick of it.
Amazing. Well, looking forward to catching up with you again next week. So thank you again for coming. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you for.
Of course, yeah. Jen, we'd love to know where we can find you and where we can see your work.
Oh, I'm Jen from Denver, Colorado, and you can find me on Instagram at jen-tattoos, JHENN.
That's fantastic. So yeah, give Jen a like and a follow. Appreciate it, Jen. I'm really glad to see this project coming together. It's a very very beautiful rendition.
How's yours coming along?
I'll show you tonight.
Okay.
But
You choose-
anyway, no, that's great. Yeah, it's really great to have you. Please come back. We love having guests, and it's yeah, it was really great to hear your voice and hear your insights into some of these things. So yes, thank you very much for coming.
Thanks so much, James.
Yeah, of course.
Nice
Well,
to meet you, Amber.
yeah. So yeah, welcome to the crew. And anyway, thank you for tuning in for this week's exciting episode of Drawing for Tattooers. Join us next week, where we're gonna continue this journey into like tattoos and drawing and all that stuff. I'm James Wisdom. You can find me at Tattooing Wisdom on the internet. Happy drawing, everybody.